So close of play of the first day of the first test between India and England in Chennai sees England closing on 262 for 3, with Dom Sibley falling to what turned out to be the last ball of the day. He'd batted throughout. LBW to Bumrah for 87 from 286 balls. He shared a stand with Joe Root worth 200 in 64 overs. They came together with England slightly precariously placed too, because Burns and Sibley started off nicely, put on 63 together in the first 24 overs. No alarms, they're simply playing very calmly on what looks to be a very flat pitch at the moment. And then from nowhere, Rory Burns went for the reverse sweep to Ashwin. He got it wrong. It hit a bit of an arm. It certainly hit his glove, and the ball popped up for punt to take behind the wickets for 33. And a chastened Burns returned to the dressing room with Dan Lawrence then coming out. He'd been promoted, of course, after a promising debut in Sri Lanka, but with Ollie Pope back in the side, and Joe Root, as we know, reluctant to bat at 3. Dan Lawrence was put into that position. A 5th ball duck he got, a full ball from Bumrah, just swinging in a little bit, trapping him on the back foot. And so suddenly, from that promising start, England was 63 for 2, but very patiently, particularly in Sibley's case, and increasingly positively in Root's case, they came together to put on those 200. Joe Root scoring his 20th Test century, his 3rd in succession, which is remarkable. It came from 164 balls. He hit 12 fours, and of course, in his 100th Test, he now joins Colin Cowdrey and Alex Stewart as Englishmen to score hundreds in their 100th Test match. So 262 for 3. We'll hear from Michael Vaughan talking about Dom Sibley's batting shortly. We'll hear from Prakash Wakankar as well over there in Pune, who's been watching to get an Indian perspective. But Tuffers, and we've got Andy Zaltzman as well, because lots of statistical input, I think, to come from the shed at some stage over the next few minutes. A wicket like that always sort of takes the gloss off the day, doesn't it, somehow? But I mean, up until that point, it was undisputably England's day. How do you feel about it now?
Well, no, I still feel it's been a fantastic day. So many boxes have been ticked. Joe Root just is in sparkling form, in the form of his life. Played beautifully. Dom Sibley as well, he'll be disappointed, that's for sure, but he'll look back and think to himself that he's had a good first sort of like run out in India. To play that kind of innings, okay, just faltered in the last over, but
he'll tired,
be,
do you think?
Yeah, for sure, but I mean, you know, he'll be sitting there at the moment, he'll be having his head in his hands going, oh lads, I can't believe it. But you know, hopefully if England go on to win this game or even draw this game, he'll be really chuffed at his contribution as well. And I think England will be, just the way they've set their stall out, John. I mean, could you imagine, it could be 180 for 6, couldn't it? 180 for 7, and the dressing room's in a bit of disarray, but that dressing room will be absolutely buoyant this evening with the way they've gone about it. I think England couldn't have had a better day.
And these first days are so important, aren't they? I thought the morning session was certainly most of it was like sort of 2 heavyweights. So you've had all the nonsense at the weigh-in and then having a go at each other, and nose to nose. And you've had all that stuff. Ding ding, and then the bell goes. And the first round can be a little bit sort of a bit cagey. They sort of dance around the fringes a bit up against the ropes, and a little bit of the old prod. And that's sort of what the first session of a series often is like, isn't it? And it was a bit like that until suddenly. Well, I mean, Rory Burns, I don't know, I've got on about it a bit today, but it's trying to work out what went in the thought process for him to play that reverse sweep when he'd been playing so well, so simply, just so controlled, and just getting himself back into playing cricket again, which he hasn't done for months. Getting himself back in, getting used to the whole pace of the game and the chatter around the bat and the light and the start of a Test series, and then it's an aberration.
Soft wicket, wasn't it?
Yes.
Soft wicket. And
but why would you play it? Why would you do it?
I'm not sure. I mean, you're looking then trying to sort of like rotate strike, or trying to sort of like take a little bit of the momentum to the bowling side, but there's no need in the subcontinent.
15 minutes before lunch.
I know, exactly. You've always got to be thinking sort of like, as you say, 10 or 15 minutes beyond. You can never get ahead of yourself in the subcontinent, because something always strange seems to sort of crop up, and you can come a cropper, as did Rory Burns. But he'll learn from that, and I'm sure that after this Test match, someone might just say, what was, as you say, what were you doing there? You'd got yourself in, you'd done all the hard work. Just do a Dom Sibley and just keep knocking it around, and then Joe Root can come out and play the flamboyant shots. He did all the hard work, but he'll learn from that.
I wonder who it'll be. It'll be poor old Jonathan Trott or Chris Silverwood, who's got to go and ask the question, I suppose, at some stage.
Not today, John. Not today.
No, I don't think so. Because also what it did, it just exposed Lawrence with minutes ticking down to lunch.
Yeah.
A lovely start and everything right, and the bowlers started to think, okay. And we've already seen most of the bowlers on offer as well. He'd already had, Kohli had already given them all a bit of a go, and Ashton was on very early, and it was doing absolutely nothing, flat as anything. But you got the young batsman coming out in only his third Test match, promoted to number 3 as well, because I've described with Pope in the side, batting down there at 6, Root not wanting, as we know, to bat at 3. So really, that was the only opening that was there for Lawrence. But it's a big step up.
Yeah.
And he's there and exposed. He gets a 5th ball duck.
Yeah.
Rather similar actually to Sibley's dismissal there. Just playing, he was full straight bang on the crease.
Yeah, it was a shot by someone who hadn't faced Jasprit Bumrah. That is what he looks to do, isn't it? He's got that strange whippy action that all of a sudden really rushes you and skids onto you and hits you on the pad. And if you're playing slightly across the line and you haven't got your timing yet, and you're just starting your innings, that ball can hurry on and thunder into the pad. So he'll be disappointed as well. Let's
talk about Joe Root then, shall we? Because
wow.
The point I was making is that he just, and this happened before he actually got his double hundred in Gaul, but just from the start of the tour, he's just worn a big smile on his face. He just seems to be really enjoying himself. I think he knows it's a big challenge, and Sri Lanka could have been a big challenge too. 2 Test matches in Gaul, you lose the toss, and all that stuff. He's the captain. He's got to set the tone. He knows it's going to be hard work. He just to see him out there, he's chatting to the fielders. He was chatting away to the wicketkeeper in the Sri Lankan Test, wasn't he? He's sort of bouncing around, big smile on his face. He just seems to be in a really good place, and that was before he actually got all those runs. And now he's knocked off 300s. He's beaming from ear to ear.
He's in the form of his life and enjoying his cricket, and he just sees everything as a challenge to get better and better and better. As you say, 30 years old now, just received his 100th cap. Some perhaps sort of more senior sort of like players could just sort of say, well, I might just sort of like, I might just take my foot off the gas a little bit and enjoy my sort of like luxury and my status and everything. He's looking to get better and better and better, and he's obviously done a bit of work on technique, hasn't he? And he's done a few little bits and pieces that have just sharpened himself up, as he said earlier in interviews with you, because I think I'm forever looking to get better. I need to get better. I want to score more runs, and that is sort of like, I think that sort of enthusiasm's just bleeding through the side as well. We must get better, we can get better, and then we'll enjoy it even more. And he's just in the form of his life, and shows what a great player of spin he is as well.
I've just seen him receiving. It's a very nice silver,
lovely, wasn't it?
Cap that you get, and it's on a sort of wooden plinth. Yeah. And I was just thinking to myself, you can't go wrong with the spelling of Root, can you?
No.
Because when Kevin Peterson was given his at the Gabba, they spelled his name wrong. It was had to go back to the engravers. But I think Root is probably okay, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, what a proud moment that is, and as you say, as captain as well. And I think that he's really started to mould this England side now. People say that when you first come in captain, you've got to sort of put your authority in. It takes a bit of time, doesn't it? And you learn as a captain as well. But batting wise, he's just come out of the blocks like a greyhound, hasn't he? All these consecutive hundreds, and just looks in complete control. Looks, as you say, in a happy place. He's happy with his side. He's happy with the preparation, the setup, and everything in these very strange times. And just looks to be really enjoying himself at the crease, and bats with such a lovely tempo.
There's only one slightly dodgy period after lunch where the two seamers, actually, Ishan and Bumrah, bowled a really terrific spell between them, and there was a little bit of prodding around outside the off stump. It just shows that even if the pitch is incredibly flat and the fast bowlers are inclined to think, there's nothing in it for me, but if you do just bowl that challenging line at a busy batsman like Root, you can still find the edge.
Well, yes, of course. Well, the bowler's got to have a bit of a chance, haven't they?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because at the moment, Joe's not really giving them any sort of chance. Anything they're serving up, he seems to be able to master and counter, doesn't he? But I think one of the major things that Joe Root has changed as well, and I think there has been a few little technical kind of stuff, but he's just decided he wants to go and get those big daddy hundreds, and that is by playing low risk cricket shots. You don't have to go through the gears, get to 50 and then really start playing shots and take the attack, to the bowling side. Just bat time and you'll get there. You might get it 20 or 30 overs later, or 10 or 15 overs later, but for the team, that is what's required, and I think he's really tuned into that way of sort of helping the side out.
The way he looks like most likely to get out is run out, although he promised he wasn't going to do it anymore, because I think he holds the record now. He's certainly run out 8 times in Test cricket. But there are a couple of harem-scarum moments again today. I think probably running between the wickets, it is a confidence thing, isn't it, and calling your partner, but whether he just lost a little bit of faith in himself at judging a run at the moment, I'm not sure, but he's almost run out before lunch.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I think that was the kind of, it got a bit frantic, his batting, didn't it? It was sort of like, come on, we need to take the singles, we need to put the opposition under pressure, we need to run them ragged. Well, you don't necessarily need to do that. You need to be completely in control of your emotions and give them nothing, and that's what he's done for the last 3 Test matches. He's blatted.
Let's get some stats from Andy before we speak to Prakash, shall we? So come on then, Andy, fill your boots, because one of those days, well, certainly route-wise anyway, this will be a day that lots of people will remember. For to score 100 in your 100th Test doesn't happen that often. Third Englishman, 9th player in all. I think the stat that really grabbed me today, and Root's batting this winter has been absolutely staggering, is this list of players from outside Asia who've scored centuries in 3 consecutive Tests in Asia. Alistair Cook was the last to do that on England's tour of India in 2012. That was also the last time that an England player got hundreds in 3 consecutive Tests anywhere. Before Cook, Hashim Amla, Jacques Kallis, Brian Lara, Ken Barrington, Garfield Sobers and Everton Week, some of the finest batsmen that have ever graced the game. It's a incredibly illustrious list to be on. I've also just looked at players who've got 125 in 3 consecutive Tests, and this is only the 23rd instance of that in Test cricket, and the 5th by an Englishman. The other England players that are Andrew Strauss did it in 2009 in 3 games against West Indies. Before that, you've got to go back to Ken Barrington again in those games in Pakistan and India in 1961. Then Wally Hammond and Jack Hobbs in the earlier days of Test cricket. And it's interesting looking at Root's form. Before this winter, in England's last 39 Tests, Root had scored only 1 first innings 100. That's going back to August 2017, and he'd always been a very good first innings player up till that run. Also mentioned how well he used to start series up until that 2017 series against West Indies, and then the Ashes that followed, which was the first real challenge his captaincy faced. And since then, he'd averaged 22 in his first innings of series in 12 series before this winter. From 2014 up to that 2017 series, he'd averaged 119 in his first innings of series. So this is a welcome return to that brilliant, dominant early series form that he had. And I was looking at the footage, something I mentioned while play was on. Him tapping the bat on the ground just before the bowler releases the ball. And I was looking at some of the highlights from last summer, and he wasn't doing it then. He was standing with his bat raised, and I wonder if that's just given him a better rhythm in his batting, whether it's just a little a change that's benefited him. I'd be interested to know what he would say about that. We shall ask him, because he's also got that twiddle too at the start, hasn't he, that we haven't seen before, and so he's obviously, it's something as basic as a backlift, but when you're a perfectionist like he is, you're clearly looking at all sorts of ways to try and improve your game. India's bowling, Tuffers, let's have a chat about that, because they didn't play Kuldeep, the left-arm wrist spinner, which we thought they might. So Shahbaz Nadeem playing his 2nd Test at the age of 31. He's been around a while. Slow left armour, and the Sundar and Ashwin. Any thoughts on the spinners?
Well, first day at Chennai on an absolute belter. You've got to sort of you just got to rely on your consistency, and if you can pick up a wicket or 2 for your skipper, not too bad. I thought they bowled okay. They'll be sort of wanting the seamers to do a little bit of damage in the morning and perhaps bowl to that lower middle order and try and nick a couple of wickets, but they'll be thinking to themselves, listen, we've lost a toss, let our batters get up there, and then hopefully in the 3rd innings we can come in and get a few wickets. But Ashwin looked to me tricky still, bowling those lovely little sort of carom balls and those little arm balls from around the wicket to Dom Sidley, got past the outside edge on a number of occasions, and I quite like the left arm spinner as well. He looks like, he looked like a little bit like that Embal Demia, didn't he, from Sri Lanka. If he gets on a wicket that turns a bit, I think he'll be a handful. But it's a tough old day at the office when you lose a toss as a spin bowler and you bowl first.
can see on my screen a familiar sight of this winter so far. Joe Root being interviewed after scoring 100, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from him later on as well. I must mention Jasprit Bumrah before we speak to Prakash.
Yeah, bowled well.
2 for 40 from 18.3 overs. I hadn't realised, if I saw it again, that actually Sibley's dismissal was a full bunger. A big full ball, him flushing the pad. So I think it's a little bit tired, and a little bit of in drift there maybe for Bumrah as well. So Prakash, good to have you joining us again. Let's give us a bit of an Indian perspective on the first day of the series. I'd liken it to two heavyweight boxers in the first round to start with, just being a little bit of the old tentative jab, just sort of sizing each other up.
Well, I think it's very clear, Agus, that England have landed at least a couple of serious punches, haven't they? I mean, look, we know what's happened in the past, and I know a lot of the English supporters will be concerned whether or not there'll be a repetition of the last series in 2016. But if we just look at the day's play, I mean, it's been England by a mile. Yes, that last over dismissal of Sibley, one feels bad for him because he'd worked so hard. But what can you say about Joe Root? I mean, he was imperious. He was in complete control. I think India missed a really big trick, in my view, not playing Kuldeep Yadav.
Oh, yes.
Because I really think that what do you do with him? He must be wondering, okay, they didn't play me in Australia. Now, again, people get injured, and I still don't get a look in. Might be thinking of an alternate profession. I don't know. So that was one thing. I also wonder what you all felt there about Virat Kohli's captaincy. I mean, if you think about I think it was maybe around 45th over, when Ishant was bowling really well. There were a few odd questions. The in-drift had just begun. And then both Ishant and Ashwin were taken off, and suddenly it was as if the pressure valve had been removed.
I was just saying to Tuffers, there was that period, wasn't there, where actually those two bowled so well, both the quick bowlers were just teasing the batsman outside the off stump. So it was an opportunity. It is interesting about the spinners, though, isn't it? Because we've established that the Shahbaz Nadeem was the oldest Indian debutant spinner for, 30 years or something, and it's as if they're trying to avoid Kuldeep, and yet, English batsmen on the subcontinent, balls turning, not today, I accept that, but that bit of mystery spin is always something to have up your sleeve, I'd have thought.
I would think so too. I mean, everybody knows a wrist spinner can generally get a little more out of any surface. And Kuldeep would have been thirsting to really get out there. So yes, I think that was a miss on hindsight. Washington Sundar to bolster the batting, I don't really buy that argument. If your top six are not going to get you the runs on Indian wickets, I'm not sure what a seventh can do, taking nothing away from Washington's performance in Australia. But I think those were different conditions completely. And not to have Jadeja, obviously they're missing him big time. And what about the pitch? I mean, the pitch was an absolute beauty, isn't it? I mean, I feel
well,
I could have got 25.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you the question because there was such intensity in the Australian series, of course, on pitches where the fast bowlers were fizzing it through. We all remember Pujara taking all those blows and so on that I suspect probably did undoubtedly grip India. And yet today was a bit like going back down to earth again of what actually subcontinental test matches can be like, and it's quite attritional, not many shots played. It's really trying to establish superiority, having won the toss, which is often so important in your part of the world. I just wonder whether people were expecting it to come down to earth to that sort of pace again.
No, I don't think anyone did. And of course there's this angle to this whole test match and the pitch preparation with a gentleman called V. Ramesh Kumar.
Where's he come from?
He comes from a town in Tamil Nadu, from a place called Tirupur, which is actually India's garment export capital.
Right.
And he actually has a business which is export of garments overseas. But he also runs an academy with about 15 or 16 pitches. He's got 80 or 90 odd kids that train there. He's undergone the BCCI pitch curators program, etc. But he hasn't apparently made a pitch which has been used in a first-class game. No. He's done it for under-19s and under-23s and so on. So this is a big test for him. And look, we'll have to wait and see tomorrow and day after, isn't it? I mean, the red soil is visible.
It is.
And you and I remember from our times in Chennai what the red soil can do besides soiling clothes.
Absolutely, and there's 2 test match strips it's got to produce in very short time, so it will be interesting. So just the last thought then, Prakash, I just wonder how the music is there in India after that first day.
Well, I think if you just listen to what people are saying in some of the social media chat, there's 2 classes, right? There's one category of people who say, okay, fine, we've been here before. England will get 500, we'll get 700, and that theory. The other, I think, is the big difference in this England side. If you look at the batting to come, and if Joe Root can continue back through, if England can bat a couple more sessions tomorrow at least, I think they'll have a big total on their hands. And then it's going to be a question of will the Indian batsmen be over anxious to prove themselves? Will Jofra Archer really get some speed going? How will Leach and Best bowl? I think that's really going to be the key. If the 2 English spinners go at less than 2.5, 3 and over and build some pressure and get wickets, I think we could have a very interesting test match. I know what you're going to say, but I actually think it's England now who have to set the course in the next 2 sessions tomorrow. You
always do this, Prakash. You always big England up, and then India come round the back, and you know. Anyway, it's lovely to talk to you. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Eh?
Catch you. Thank you.
he's tough as he always does. Our Prakash.
He's a canny operator.
Well, he is. He always gives everything into England, and then India seem to have won the game. But however, all joshing aside, at 63 for 2, England would have taken that. But it's a question, really, as we were saying, about what comes tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's the partnerships that really set up huge scores. And Al Prakash said there, people have been saying England get 500 and then India whiz past them and get 700. 700's a lot of runs. You've got to get 3 or 4 people getting big hundreds there.
That's a long time in the field.
It is. And we were talking about the wicket and the red soil as well. Is it going to crumble? I think it will do. I think it will take a couple of days, but England have just got to really, really kind of keep their foot on the throttle, make the use of this fantastic first start. 263 for 3 with the skipper, getting a ton. If you'd have asked, if you'd have given England that at the beginning of the day, they'd have been absolutely delighted. Just got to keep it going.
Follow England's tour of India via the TMS podcast, with a new episode at the end of each day's play.
So let's hear from the England captain. Simon Mann's been speaking to Joe Root.
Last night, the guys actually put a little surprise together for me. Said got some videos from some past players, some friends and family, and Ben in particular stood up and said some really kind words. Then to come today and for us to start the series in the way that we have it couldn't have gone any better. By a little blip at the end there. So really hope that we can build on that tomorrow, and obviously delighted with how things have gone personally.
Joe, how are you feeling physically? You went down with cramp after hitting that 6, and you were helped by Virat Kohli. Are you ready for more tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be ready for more tomorrow. There's a little bit of cramp, which was a bit frustrating. Very kind of Virat to help me out. Good sportsmanship from him, as you'd expect from him. But it was just felt like quite a long day, and I'm going to have to fuel up well tonight, get some fluids and food on board, and sleep well.
Can you compare the degree of difficulty between batting in the Sri Lanka series, where you've scored lots of runs, and batting out there today? How would you compare the two?
Different challenges. I think in Sri Lanka there was obviously a little bit more lateral movement, more spin, side spin, whereas here was more trying to counter the bounce initially against the spinners, and obviously challenging the reverse swing from the seamers. So it was very different, and it's always difficult to try and put two against each other.
What about the surface? I mean, does it feel like a sort of 400, 450, 500 sort of pitch? I mean, is it good enough to go on and make a huge score?
I think we've got to look to try and get as many as we can, 600, 700 if we can. Really try and make the most of the first innings, make it while it's good, and those footholds are starting to wear quite quickly. So if we can bat into the whole of tomorrow and maybe into day 3, then things could speed up quite quickly for us, and you never know what can happen from that point onwards. But ultimately, we've got to try and back up today. It's been a really impressive start to things, but we've got to make it count now. And that's going to be the challenge for this team. We said we need to make big first innings runs. We've said we need to bat long periods of time in these conditions. can we go and do it? And that's all the focus will be going into tomorrow.
And what about Dom Sibley? Disappointing for him right at the end there, but is that what you're looking for from Dom Sibley at the other end?
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic innings today. To come out of Sri Lanka with maybe a few question marks in his own mind about his game against spin, and for him to go and put a performance early on in this series like that together against a high quality attack, dealing with reverse swing as well, was really impressive, and he should take a lot of heart and confidence from that into the rest of the series. But it was, I really did feel for him. He deserved 100 tonight, tomorrow morning. But that's what happens when you play against good players. They can take wickets late on in the day, and the challenge will be to try and better that partnership that we got together, try and better that tomorrow.
It wasn't just Joe Root who batted brilliantly today. Dom Sibley ground out 87 from 285 balls. Michael Vaughan's here. What did you make of that?
Well, I think that second innings, second Test match knock in Galle just gave him a huge amount of confidence, and he's taken that technique, that mind set of playing spin, getting closer to it, really smothering that full of length delivery, going right back to the shorter length deliveries. A very simple method of where he's looking to score to the off spin. He's just looking to work it on the onside. Every now and again he'll punch it through the offside off the back foot. He's played 2 or 3 nice sweep shots, so that's something that we didn't necessarily see against Sri Lanka. I love players that show a huge amount of character, and when you've had 3 innings in subcontinent conditions and got out to the same bowler 3 consecutive times for a score less than 10, your character gets challenged at this level, because he would have known, and rightfully so, that the pundits and the supporters and social media would have been alight with, Sibley can't play spin, he's got no chance, England have got to get rid of him, who's going to open the batting? And that innings in the second test in Galle was a big one for him. And now he's arrived in Chennai. The pitch is good, they win the toss, but you're up against better bowlers. Ashwin is a better bowler than what he would have faced against Sri Lanka. Even though the pitch is better, he's still up against a more powerful team. Virat Kohli stood a few yards away for you, the superstar, just looking at you and looking at every move. An Indian side that has just won in Australia, full of confidence, and he's managed to just go to his method, which is occupy the crease.
Yes.
It's just a very simple method that he has, that he's got 2 or 3 scoring areas, generally on the onside, and he just sticks to them. He leaves well outside of off stump, he makes the bowlers come to him, and he just, even if he has, and he's had a few times today where he's not scored at all freely, it's been, a grind, he's just kind of been occupying the crease, making sure he's there for the skipper, but he's not gone out of his bubble, and that takes a huge amount of mental strength just to stay in your game at this level under that amount of pressure.
I suppose the most recent opening batsman England have had of that sort of character would be Alistair Cook, who you could say, again, probably only had 3 shots. He did have more, perhaps, offside play than Sibley had. Yep. He had that sort of the left-hander's cut, didn't he? That was obviously a common stroke for a left-hander to play, but a lot of it was leg side, off the pads, and just milking the ball away there. And it's that mindset in which an opening batsman has to just block everything out, and rates of scoring don't matter, and particularly in India and on the subcontinent, certainly in the first innings, if you're batting first, the rate of scoring really is almost irrelevant.
Yeah, and I do think when you look back to Alistair, he was born to do that. From the age of whenever he started playing a game, 8 or 9, he always opened the bat, and he wanted to bat long periods of time. School cricket, junior cricket, went to adult cricket, obviously Essex, and then on for England. And Dom Sibley's very similar. He's always been at the top of the order. He's always got big scores, and it's embedded in his system that he knows how to bat for a long period of time, and he likes runs. There's no hiding from the fact that when you're an international player and you're a top order batsman, you are judged, your currency is runs. At the end of today, all he's going to go back to his room and think about the runs he's got. He's not going to be bothered that he's taken him 270-80 balls. It's the runs and it's the end column that he's looking after, and it's just his method. It's the way that he's going about his business. I believe in Test match cricket, every single Test match team, they need a Dom Sibley or a Pujara. You need one, because the way that he's played, it's given Joe Root the confidence to go and play more aggressively in the afternoon session, because he knew he had the rock at the other end, just kind of holding fort, Ben Stokes will feel exactly the same way. A Butler, Ollie, if you've got a Sibley that's just going to wear the opposing bowlers down. So you speak to Ashwin and Bumrah tonight and Ishant Sharma, you know what it's like as a bowler. If you're running into someone like Dom Sibley, you're busting a gut and all of a sudden he's just going boom, boom, and leaving. You get bored, you're getting tired, and it just helps the rest of the team. And you know, a bowler's best friend is a batter in your team like Dom Sibley.
Where does that line come then? Because we'll take the mickey out of Geoffrey Boycott, who batted like this. You know, although Geoffrey did have more shots in his locker, he didn't often see them. And his opponents call him selfish and batting for himself and all that sort of stuff. He's not thinking about the team. So, I mean, is there a line in which someone like Geoffrey Boycott would get criticism for not adapting perhaps in certain circumstances, and yet you know you have an innings like this which is absolutely what is required?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer that in the first innings you can be as selfish as you like. You can play exactly how you want to play in the first innings. In the second innings, if the game's trying to be set up, well, you might have to change the way. And if you are playing in a similar way in the second innings as the first innings because it's just the way that you play, well, then you can start pointing the finger of someone being a selfish batter. But in the first innings, you're opening the batting, you can do whatever you like. You can just bat and bat and bat. I guess the question will come, particularly in Australia, if you bat so slowly on day one and all of a sudden the second new Kookaburra ball is taken late on in the day and you lose 2 or 3 wickets and you allow the Australians back into the game because you've not quite grasp that 50 to 80 over period where the Kookaburra ball does nothing. I guess that you could have the finger pointed at you, but in India, on the subcontinent, you just know that first innings runs are so important that you just want to bat as long as you possibly can. And if it takes you till 20 overs to go before you declare on day 2 to allow the Indians to have a bat, and it's 550 on the board, and Dom Sibley's batted the majority of those overs, I think it's the perfect way to play Test match cricket. Too long we criticised England for being too aggressive and too flamboyant, and now all of a sudden we've got a player that plays Test match cricket the right way. We can't criticise the way that he's playing. I think he's doing a brilliant job for the team.
I was talking earlier about England's last 2 victories in India. Tim Robinson batted forever in 84-5. Alistair Cook batted forever in 2012, and I mean it is the way to success.
Yeah, it is. It's exactly that. I mean, again, as a bowler, on this kind of wicket, which is a road, at the minute it'll deteriorate on days 3, 4, and 5. I've no doubt about that. What would you like a batter to be doing? Taking huge risks. So he's basically doing what the bowlers don't want him to do, which is just wear them down, just rotate the strike. I think a question that you would ask Joe Root, is he frustrating to bat with? Because you don't always get the strike. And I've not seen Joe Root frustrated today. He will be absolutely delighted for the odd over where he can sit on his bat at the non-striker's end, knowing full well that he's probably not going to get down the business end. But it gives him a breather. I think it's been the perfect first day as a batting unit of the way that you need to play on a good pitch against a good attack in conditions that are tough. You've just got to set your foundation to make sure that you're looking to bat a long period of time, and that's exactly what England have done today.
Just a last thought. It's interesting, we talked about the change in England's attack, if you like, or the way at least they're going around playing Test cricket. It was Joe Root's early years as captain in which they decided they were going to play this very positive style. Remember, and it was like, hang on, calm down a bit. So it's when they were in Sri Lanka, wasn't it? Particularly, there's a very fine line between being positive and being reckless, and they I thought crossed that line a few times. But now you've got Joe Root, who's actually firmly in that camp now of the Chris Silverwood camp, as it were, of the value of the big first innings, of time out and the crease and so on. It's interesting how he's moved on in quite a relatively short time. Yeah,
and Chris Silverwood, I'm delighted you mentioned him because he deserves all the credit. You think Trevor Bayliss was a wonderful white ball coach, but never felt that he grasped test match cricket in the right manner. I always felt it was just an afterthought. Just play Test match cricket, we'll play it aggressively. Well, yeah, you'll win games playing aggressively, but you'll also lose a lot of games as well. So you won't get the consistency that you require if you're going to go to challenge the best teams in the world. To win in Australia, you've got to play this way. You've got to try and wear the Australians down. If you're going to compete against an Indian side in Indian conditions, you have to try and wear them down over a long period of time. You can't blow the best teams away with a 60 over batting innings. You just can't do that, but you can wear them down over the course of a long series. series by batting 130, 150 overs in the first innings, and it might be that it takes you to the third test match to win the game, but you're just going to make sure that you bat in your mindset to play out the first innings in particular for a long period of time. And we know that particularly in subcontinent conditions, if you can stay in the game long enough, it escalates quickly by the time it gets to days 4 and 5. And if you're ahead of it by batting first, which England are doing here, do exactly the same tomorrow. Don't even think about going up in the gears. My message to them, go again tomorrow and just make sure that if you can nullify very early in a test match that you can't lose, because you only have to go back to 2016 where England continuously batted first, got 450s and 470s and still lost the game. So even from this position, it's not a winning position, and it's not a position that you can't lose the game, because this Indian side could easily get 650. Yep. You know, they're that good a cricket team. Bat the whole day tomorrow, maybe give them a few overs at the end of it, but go again. It's a good mechanism for success.